Okay, in this video, still about Christina Markyate, I want to suggest another tack you can take if you were to write a theme on the paper, something to investigate, some question to answer, some observation to make, some writing that's generally interesting, somewhat original, always perspicacious and perceptive, and always providing evidence that you thoroughly read and thought about the work. All right, that's some things that a theme is meant to show to a teacher. Now, to write a theme on this book, one way you can do it is to consider the notion of authorial intent. Basically, what did the author intend to do with this book in writing this book, or why did the writer write the book? And you need to always, unless you have evidence that is sufficient enough to cause you to mention it as by way of sort of getting the objections out of the way, well, you need to always assume that there was a reasonable purpose for a book, unless there's enough evidence to suggest that the book is just a result of some wacky event, or a bet, or an semi-insane burst of activity from the author designed to be a rebuttal to convention, like Dostoevsky's Notes on the Underground or something. Usually authors will write their books not to be overly cute, making some sort of deep philosophical statement about the impossibility of conveying information through language. No, very few are going to do that. Okay, so they're going to believe that they can actually write a book that conveys the information they want it to convey in such a way that the goal they want it to get done in writing the book actually has a good chance to get done. That's usually how authors treat their works. There's always exceptions. I'm over-laboring the point, but so ask yourself, what does this author of The Life of Christina Markyate want to do with this book? Now, when you ask yourself that sort of question, first you have to make the assumption that the author is sane and has a legitimate goal. That's everything I just talked about. Okay, so you make that assumption. Then you realize that your answer always is going to have at least two things, two ways. Okay, one is the obvious. What's the obvious thing he's trying to do? He's trying to get Christina to be viewed as someone worthy of sainthood, someone worthy of sort of like I don't want to use the word cult figure, but you get the idea. A minor saint, something like that. Well, what? Okay, so you get the obvious out of the way. Get the obvious out of the way, because I guarantee you a lot of people have noticed that, and it's been written on. It's like a thread-worn tire. Okay, so get the what does this, what would this author want to do with this work? There's usually going to be an obvious answer. Move it out of the way. Don't write on that. Now think it to yourself. What's another thing he or she might have wanted to do with this work? Now, because we know this author was a monk, I'm just going to say he. What's another thing that he might want to have done with this work? Or might have wanted this work to accomplish? There is one thing that's unique about this book. Now, you're going to need a little bit of history for this. But this history is not deep, and you can find it online. Okay, free. So I did not ask you to do this sort of info hunting, background hunting, history hunting, and I'm not going to ask you to do it, but just for sake of the example here, you would have to have done a little bit of this to find out some facts about these characters. First of all, this book was written while Christina Markyate was still alive. That's very unusual. Very unusual. Second, the book presents Abbot Jeffrey as being very generous to Christina. But you will find out if you do some basic background digging that Abbot Jeffrey died when Christina was 50 years old. So he died before Christina, quite a bit before Christina. All right. The book presents Christina as living in penury. I mean, at one point, one of her maidens is stealing lettuce from a neighbor's garden, right? She's given up all wealth. She's just dependent on gifts. Who is the person that would give her the most gifts? Jeffrey. So when he dies, now what? Now what, right? All right. Now, if you would have stumbled across a footnote that's in the authorized version of the Life of Christina Markyate. Now, what we mean by the authoritative critical version, I shouldn't say authorized version. That's the KJV. Something reserved for the 1611 version of the Bible that was authorized by King James. No. What I mean is the critically authoritative version is an edition that was translated by C.H. Talbot, and the notes in that translation would have told you that the abbot who follows Abbot Jeffrey, I believe his name is Sebastian, but I'm not sure. It really doesn't matter. The next abbot was incredibly stingy, and Abbot Jeffrey, and all this is found in a work called Gesta Abbatum, the works of the abbot, and they were meant to detail the law, the daily administration of the different abbots that would pass through a monastery like St. Albans or some Albans. So in the Gesta Abbatum, you find out that the next abbot, you find out that the monks got angry at Jeffrey because Jeffrey was being too liberal with their materials, their goods, by giving them away. They didn't like that. They didn't like that he was giving a lot to Christina Markyate. They didn't like that when her house burned down, which is not mentioned in the book. He rebuilt it with their wood. They didn't like any of that. The next abbot came and put an end to all of that. And the pendulum swung to the other direction. You like it in the middle where it's nice and balanced. But this abbot was like, let's take everything away from Christina. So, one other motive that this monk may have had in writing about Christina this way is to suggest to the new abbot that they needed to continue providing material goods to Christina in order to receive her spiritual goods, her blessings. And notice how this author seems to be very takes pains to show how Abbot Jeffrey had benefited in many ways from his relationship with Christina. And twice in the book, the author says he gave her the material and she gave him the spiritual goods. There was this exchange happening. This book, what I'm trying to suggest, and it goes nothing beyond a suggestion, nowhere beyond a suggestion, but the book may have been written to help the new abbot realize that the monastery needed to continue the goodwill towards Christina. I want to show you something here. Give me just a second, because there's another bit of evidence that suggests this. All right. And here's the cover of the work. Now this is coming from an illustrated manuscript. All right. Now notice Christina is there. Her hand is crossing a threshold. Right. The background is green. She's on earth. This is Christ in heaven. Okay. So you have the spiritual and the earthly. And guess who's behind her? All crowded behind her and touching her. The monks. They can't approach Christ this way. Christina can't. Christina is the handmaiden, is the wife of Christ. She is the one that reaches over across the border. All right. So the monks seem to be saying, we need to take care of her so that we can be taken care of. Thus, Mr. New Abbot, let's get busy giving material goods to Christina. Because we do know that everything stopped after Abbot Jeffrey died. Maybe this was written as an attempt to revive the tradition of giving to Christina. She certainly would have needed it. She was still alive, needing to eat and to live and be sheltered. So it's worthy to consider. It's actually a pretty decent suggestion. And there's enough in the text to back it up, to move it into the realm of a genuine possibility. That's all you need to write a good theme.